Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Frankie's Open Mic. I'm your host, Haley Overseth of Frankie's Podcast Network, and I have my co-host, Alicia Maximo of Venora AI here with me. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are so excited. We have got Walt Alfred with us from Ally Power. Walt, hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Haley. It's great to be here. Thank you very much, Alicia. I'm very excited for the conversation.
Yes, of course. We are happy to have you.
We're so excited too because Ally Power is just like right in line on the frequency with the kind of energy, and this is really kind of where we get to have some fun here, the kind of energy of people that we like to support and the energy of causes and impact we like to support. And it's an energy solution. I love this. We're going to talk so much about energy. So tell the folks at home who are not initiated yet what Ally Power is all about.
Sure. The way I started Ally Power and just thinking about the name Ally, aluminum, the chemical symbol for it is Al, and sodium hydroxide is in common parlance called Li. So if you put them two together, you get Ally. And if you actually put them together in real life, what you get is power. So Ally Power.
Oh, that's genius.
That is so genius. It's like the universe wanted to be our friend and create a system that was going to help us have sustainable energy. That's just so brilliant. That's some wonderful orchestration. So tell us, how did you come to this place of wanting to create a new energy solution? And tell us about why your energy solution is so different from others, if we can kind of start there.
Sure. So my background is in political science and economics from American University. And then I got my law degree at New York Law School. And during both of those educational experiences, I understood the need for us as a whole society to transfer the way we power it to more green solutions, whether that's in transportation or in energy security, even in backup power, in our data centers. There's a lot of different use cases for powering those in a green and renewable way. And when I was looking at the technology landscape, I found that there was really a dearth of options and really an opening for a new type of technology that could provide the necessary power as well as transportation solutions simultaneously. So that's how I got started. And when I was in law school, I was not exactly your typical law student. So in addition to studying torts and contracts, I was also making hydrogen on the side. So, which was very interesting.
Lab experiments.
Right.
Don't worry, guys. I'm just holding down all the economics and all the law school and all the science all at once. Genius. I love it.
Yes, I feel like Walt was a man with a plan, but yes, keep going.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then after I graduated law school, I spent 4 years in the transportation industry learning about how this idea that I had in my head, how I can connect the energy sector with the transportation sector. And I learned a lot about how our internal combustion engines work, as well as the new and up and coming technologies like electric battery vehicles versus fuel cell technology. And I incorporated those insights into the actual patent that issued just this past year.
That is amazing.
It's amazing
So,
accomplishment. I feel like the difference between studying law but also studying what you're really passionate about, it's a very powerful message and explains the energy and the impact that Ally Power is currently making, but also about to make.
Yes, it was a big growing process for myself.
Mhm.
When I was in college and law school, I wasn't as, let's say, extroverted or personable as I am today. And that's
Mhm.
something that I had to learn as I developed the technology and developed the company, is really evangelizing what the benefits are of the technology and how each sector can actually benefit from the Ally Power technology. So it was not just about trying to get customers, though. I also had to grow out the company in terms of the board of directors and the employees within the company that are going to be actually working and implementing the solution, and
Mhm.
also going all around the world. So traveling the world to see where this message would resonate the most and where the customers' needs are the greatest.
That's very impressive that you have such like I feel like your path that you had, it's like you almost reverse engineered, okay, I see all of the economics, political science, and the reasons we need this solution. Now let me go figure
Mhm.
out how to make the solution. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So can you talk to us a little bit about the technology itself? Because the process is, the way it's described is that it's a safe process. It's something that doesn't require a lot of the same inputs that our old energy systems do. And it has, as one of its byproducts, is potable water, which is incredible. So tell us a little bit about like the technology, the system, how it works.
Sure. So it's really two chemical reactions in one plant or station. The first reaction is with the aforementioned aluminum and sodium hydroxide together within a reactor. That creates the three revenue sources out of the four that are as a part of the business. So when you combine those two together, what you generate is exothermic heat, which you could use to run a steam turbine. You also release hydrogen at the same time. So those two go upwards. And then the third byproduct is sodium aluminate, and that one goes down to a collecting tank, which then could be shipped off to our customers for the chemical byproduct, sodium aluminate. The hydrogen that we have then made and released, we can either use that for refueling vehicles, or we can run it through a stationary fuel cell, which will contain the second chemical reaction, which is hydrogen and oxygen from the air. Now, when you combine those two together, you produce an extra 15 kilowatts of electricity per kilogram of hydrogen, and you also produce potable water. So as a result, you have four different revenue sources: electricity, hydrogen, sodium aluminate, and potable water to market to your potential customers. And all of this fits in a very small footprint. And in terms of CapEx expense for the product, it is on the low end in terms of our capital expenses for traditional renewable energy sources.
Oh, it's a great
So
breakdown.
one of the questions that I kind of had because so like where I'm at, I'm in South Dakota. Today it's very windy. We have wind, right? We have the big windmills. We use the wind energy. There are places that do the solar energy. Geothermal energy is something that is becoming a bit more common where I'm at for like some of the bigger agricultural side of things. I live where there's a lot of farming. Can you maybe talk to me a little bit about for like just regular folks at home or people who might not be really familiar necessarily with different options for energy resources or energy powering systems, but might be looking for those solutions? How would you compare your solution, your energy system, to some of those other sort of renewable energy sources or sustainable energy sources? And like who would you maybe say might have a lot of value in learning about those energy options that may not already be aware of them?
Sure. So, in terms of traditional renewable energy, solar and wind, those require a pretty large footprint if you're going to be doing large scale electricity generation. They also obviously require sun and wind for the solar
And
and the
you
wind
can't control
power.
that.
You
All
can't
right.
control that. That's right. And our system, in how we differentiate, is base load power. And base load power means that it runs 24/7. So we don't need any other external source of electricity in order to get it started. We can just build out the facility and then flip the switch. And now you're creating electricity 24/7, 365. In addition to those differences, we do also produce potable water. So, for example, if the community is looking for a green electricity source, but they also need to have a source of potable water because maybe they have a dearth of water, they have a shortage of water for whatever reason, we could supplement their existing water sources with our fuel cell and potable water as a byproduct.
Nice. Really, that's amazing. To bounce off of that, I started speaking about electricity. So, how does your approach differ from your traditional hydrogen production methods like the electrolysis?
Sure. So the majority of hydrogen is actually produced from methane
Hmm.
in a methanization unit, and what they combine methane with water at high temperatures, and that produces hydrogen, but it also releases a large amount of carbon dioxide at the same time. So that's one of the trade-offs of that type of hydrogen generation system, but it's relatively low cost, and it's also a very well understood technology, which is why more than 95% of hydrogen worldwide is still created using that method. The electrolyzer system is a system that uses electricity in order to separate the hydrogen and the oxygen from water. And that utilizes that electrical current to separate them. And then the hydrogen is then contained within a pressurized container and then sold off in that manner. Our system does not require that electricity, or it does not produce any greenhouse gases or carbon dioxide when you're generating the hydrogen. So that's how we differentiate from the two major pathways to generate hydrogen that have been in the market for several years now.
That's amazing. So
So
powerful.
it really is. I mean, so here's the thing. Some people might hear what you're talking about, and essentially with Allied Powers say, oh, it sounds too good to be true. You don't have dangerous chemicals going in. You don't have a dangerous process. It's not nuclear energy. You don't have the greenhouse gases. It's actually giving off things that are useful to you, like water, and things that you can actually sell back into the grid. So it kind of sounds like a miracle energy solution, and some people might be a little bit sort of overwhelmed by that and have a difficult time maybe accepting that something that has this many benefits could, like, how did we not find this sooner, humanity, kind of thing, right? So when you're kind of talking to folks about the energy solution, and they might kind of have a little bit of that, like, this sounds too good to be true, what kind of things would you maybe talk to them about, or explain to them that might sort of help them understand that, no, this is real. This is something that does have, like, this much benefit and impact is absolutely possible.
Absolutely. And that's a really great question, Haley, because we have known about this for a while. The Department of Energy of the United States did an entire study on this particular chemical reaction. And me reading it during my time at law school was one of the reasons why I tried to come up with this idea. So the reasoning behind the study, though, was saying to themselves, this can't work because, and then they listed all the reasons why it would not work. Most of the reasons why it doesn't work is if you're trying to do it within a vehicle, it complicates matters because of the chemical reaction. Just imagine yourself, you're driving in a car, and in the back seat of your trunk is a chemical reaction that's going off. Right, that's not the ideal place to have a chemical reaction. Where are you going to store all your aluminum? Where are you going to store all your sodium hydroxide? Where are you going to store all your byproduct that you're generating? What do you do with the heat that you're generating? So there's a lot of different factors that make it not ideal for having this as a mobile platform. But once you have a stable location like a station and you've connected it to the grid, now you have a model for how you can translate all these different sources of income and revenue into a viable business model and structure. And one other thing I would say is that people look at aluminum as a metal. They don't really think of it as a fuel source. They think of gasoline as a fuel source. They think of nuclear energy as a fuel source, but they don't look at their car as a potential, fuel source. They don't look at, the aluminum can that they're drinking Coke out of as a fuel source. But realistically speaking, there's more energy in your Coke can by pound for pound than gasoline. So it's intriguing how nature has stored a lot of energy within the aluminum element.
Tell me that you remember from Back to the Future when Doc put an aluminum can into his little reactor thing. Look at you just taking science fiction right out of Back to the Future and putting it into the real world. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like
There you
there's a
go.
lot of media and movies out there that are telling us the secrets of these types of energy solutions. And as far as like future technology, where now what Walt's creating with Ally Power is coming, it's coming to life. And a lot of people are being educated from these types of sources like podcasts and their social media type of platforms where they're getting actual proper information on how do you turn a can or waste into an energy solution that is good for the planet, but also good for the people, you know? So my next question for you is like, what types of businesses or communities would benefit most from implementing your hydrogen technology?
Sure. That's also a great question, Alicia. So there are a number of different ways that we can implement the technology.
Mhm.
One of the ways that we are looking at right now, and a lot of communities have these, are water treatment centers. So water treatment centers they have a huge demand for our chemical that we produce from the stations. So sodium
Mhm.
aluminate is actually used to clean up the water from your own house, from your communities, and it's run through your water treatment plant. And sodium aluminate is one of the chemicals that they use in order to treat your water so that it can get back into circulation. So placing one of our sites, one of our stations at a water treatment plant makes a lot of sense because they're used to having those types of chemicals at the site, and they have already the demand in built-in demand for the chemical that we're going to be producing from the site itself. So that's one of the focus areas that we're pursuing in
Mhm.
terms of our demonstrating our projects.
Nice. Amazing.
That is really so, again, just so impressive to me that it's like it becomes sort of a perpetual energy machine, which we've been told in literature is impossible and in science is impossible. But here you're creating the very thing that the water treatment center needs,
Mhm.
some extra clean water, and another thing that helps you clean your water. And you don't need more electricity in order to do it. Again, it just sounds so incredible. Can I ask this? Because you're talking about using aluminum to fuel cars. Do we envision a future, if you will, where communities would have, instead of gas stations, the kind of energy stations for fueling vehicles that you can create and set up? And can you maybe kind of talk a little bit about what something like that might look like in like being implemented and the sort of domino effect that comes from that and the other benefits there would be to the community that would have a sort of not a fuel station. It's not a gas station anymore. It's just a fuel station.
Yes, and I think that there are instances of the stations being powered for both EVs as well as for hydrogen, but right now they're separated. And what we wanted to do in terms of implementing our technology is create a station that could power both types of zero emission vehicles. So you're the customer out there, right? We're
Mhm.
on this podcast. We're speaking to the customer, really.
Mhm.
You're going to have a choice as to what type of vehicle that you want to buy. And if you want to go green, then you have the choice of going EV or you have the choice of going hydrogen fuel cell. So we want to be able to create a station that could power both types of vehicles and supply both the hydrogen as well as the electricity. So that's really a useful way for us to implement the technology as well. And we do have some transportation options and projects in the works as well. But it's not just for cars. There are also some projects that we have in the pipeline for aircraft as well. So for aviation. So looking
Nice.
to power an aircraft hangar with the electricity, and then also for future airplanes being able to power them with hydrogen. So it's very dynamic industry right now with a lot of changes going on.
Yeah, that's definitely what we need for a planet, but including all across the board, trucks, cars, airplanes, trains, all transportation. I feel like this is exactly what the future is going to look like.
Absolutely.
I'm
Mhm.
I'm fascinated too, and I don't like. I imagine you probably have some sort of data collection happening in-house, but I'm kind of interested the idea of when you switch. So we kind of remember during COVID, right? And only because I worked for the USGS at the time was I aware of this. But during COVID, and it was talked about on the news if I had bothered to watch the news anymore, that when everything shut down and everybody was not traveling in planes and you weren't on the car, like you could see the difference that it made in our atmosphere very quickly, right? Like there was a very noticeable difference in the emissions that we are normally putting out, and it did adjust the atmosphere. switching over to this kind of an energy solution that does not have those the greenhouse gases that are causing things like the hole in the ozone layer, right? That we all learned about as kids. Switching over to that, do you have any sort of, I don't want to say forecast necessarily, but are there any kind of studies or data that you're collecting or things that you might be kind of researching in terms of the long-term actual environmental impact that switching over to an energy solution like this could have on a global larger scale?
Absolutely. For some of our applications that we've done for projects, we have to actually estimate what the carbon intensity or the carbon savings of our solution will be, depending upon what has been there in the past, right? So in terms of, let's say we're replacing a coal power plant, we have to know exactly how much carbon is being produced from a coal power plant currently. So we have to actually research as to what what was before being pumped into the atmosphere, as opposed to what we would be able to produce in terms of the electricity. And it's a nice subtraction problem because it goes directly to zero, right? So whatever they were making before, we just subtracted all of it and say, now you're actually making 0 kilograms of carbon dioxide being pumped into the atmosphere. So that's one of the fun things about being able to present our technology to people who are very interested in lowering the carbon intensity and lowering the amount of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, is we get to showcase that, hey, this isn't just a solution that decreases it over time or lessens the greenhouse gas effect, but we're still producing some of it. You go from whatever you were producing before to absolute zero.
That's incredible. I love where this is going. I do enjoy the
Yeah.
idea of a society that's got all of these energy solutions implemented so that we do have a healthier planet in general, right? Which is the goal here overall. Can you maybe talk a little bit about when it comes to that, the environmental impact? I know you did mention a little bit that you studied it and you saw the need for it. But like Walt as a person, if we can get kind of personal a little bit, what is it for you about this solution and implementing this for the collective, as it were? Like, what makes you really excited about it? What's the why behind it for you?
So I grew up and I was a Boy Scout, right? So I got all the way to Eagle. I feel like, when you go into a campsite, you have to leave the campsite better than when you found it, right? And that's not just me, my personal campsite, but that's really the world in which I want to leave to the future generations. So I really see it as a sense of duty that we need to be able to figure out a way for us to power our existing civilization without changing the world to have it be worse for the succeeding generations. And I found that this technology, more than any other technology that I've come across, would be able to translate that, my wish and my aim, and make that into a reality. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I work so hard to get us as many projects all around the world as soon as possible.
It's a good plan.
So this is, again, my brain keeps going. This is what my brain does. Alicia's used to it. I go big bubble. I go far out in the
Go
future.
ahead, girl. Right.
Yes, she knows. So I think of things like, and Alicia and I have talked about this before. It's something that we're interested in, the idea of like sustainable agriculture and like some of the newer like vertical farming technology type things that people are doing. Again, in a place where I come from, like I come from Midwest America, we've got a lot of farmland, and there's kind of that idea of a lot of space having to be used in order to generate the food that we need to sustain our needs, right? So when you look at the energy solution you have, and then think about other things like something like vertical farming, can you maybe sort of go far out vision with us a little bit? And how does your energy solution support the infrastructure of kind of like that new paradigm where we would have less space being taken up for the generation of resources that we need? And what does that look like, and what other places do you see your energy being able to support those kinds of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the real transformative parts of the technology is that it's a lot of power, very small space. And that opens up a lot of different options that previously you were thinking about, oh, I need 20 acres in order for us to power said facility if we wanted to be green, right?
Mhm.
But now I could do the same thing with just half an acre. And now I can plant 20 acres, 19 and a half acres of farmland and make that back into what the agriculture should be and what the surrounding area should be in terms of the byproduct and what we're growing. I actually had the great fortune of visiting South Dakota because my sister actually lives there. And
Nice.
yes,
It's a small world. I love
small,
that.
small, small world. Exactly.
Right.
So
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So I was doing a cross country trip actually, and I stopped
Mhm.
by in South Dakota to visit my sister because that was the first time that I'd seen her house in South Dakota. So I knew that I had to. She would never forgive me if I drove through her state and I didn't stop by
Well,
to visit her.
no,
Gonna
because
stop by.
you
Right.
better stop by. I know it's a big state, and it's kind of empty, but like if you're gonna come here, you better stop. Like that makes
Oh,
sense.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So, but it was really intriguing to me to see how the grid pattern is within South Dakota, and how many wind turbines there are out there,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and how it's just right next to the farmland. And while I was driving, I was noticing how sometimes the blades would just be very slow or just stop and not being producing any electricity whatsoever.
Mhm.
And that's an opportunity for us to be able to power some of these sites when the wind's not blowing, right? So if we are able to supply a community with extra power when it needs it, we would be able to step in when the wind isn't blowing because it's not always blowing. So
Yeah.
having a constant source of power is certainly something that the communities should need.
Right, yeah. I have a sorry, Haley, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have a quick question as far as like during your travels between the United States and other parts of the country, do you feel like other parts of the like international countries, they're more open-minded or more advanced when it comes to putting an energy solution into their ecosystem to help their communities and to help the people of their own cities and infrastructure? And then when you're looking at United States, take South Dakota, for example, so much land, so much good soil, so much tree, so much development. What is your bias or intake of the United States adopting this energy solution for the good of the planet, for the good of the people? And then you look at comparisons to other countries where they're already way more advanced with the technology, but also with their energy solution process.
That's a great question. So it really will depend on the region as to which type of energy source they are favoring at the moment.
Hmm.
I've been to a lot of different countries, and they're not all the same in terms
Hmm.
of what their preference are and where they're investing in terms
Hmm.
of the electricity generation capacity. So in areas where there is a lot of sun, like in the Middle East, they do prefer spending the money on solar power projects, and they do prefer right now on spending it on electrolyzer projects because those are the more established, more conservative way to generate hydrogen.
Hmm.
In let's say a country like the Philippines, they're more willing to take a chance on a new novel technology like ourselves, and we found a great deal of activity in the Asia market for our particular type of technology because of that. It was something that they saw as a lot of benefits and none of the current drawbacks of the current technology. So the very intriguing thing about going all over the world is that you get to find out what people are really thinking about their decision making 10, 20, 30 years in the future as to where their energy security is really going to come from. So that's been one of the fantastic things of traveling around the world, in addition to meeting all sorts of very interesting people.
Hmm.
And
Oh, that's
trying all the
amazing.
food.
Right, right.
Oh, and the food, of course, of
You
course,
love
Yeah,
trying all the food. You got to get the
of
snacks while you're
course.
out there changing the
right.
world because you gotta fuel yourself as well as all your vehicles and all your other stuff.
Yeah.
So I
Food is
do
ultimate energy security. Yeah.
It absolutely is, which is why it'd be great to have a great energy solution behind all of the new vertical farming and awesome
Absolutely.
agricultural technologies. Like, let's build all the new world paradigms simultaneously, right, folks?
That's
Mhm.
right.
I
So,
also wanted to add,
go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say from my own personal experience looking at the United States and looking at other parts of the world, it's like how do we position the US to be more on board with these type of solutions and implementing it into their hospitals, into their communities, into their houses? Because it's like I understand US as like a capitalist like state, but when you're looking at the benefits that it has on the financial part, but also on the planet part, I feel like the United States definitely needs to get on board with implementing these energy solutions everywhere across the board. California, Las Vegas, Texas, all the different states. So yeah, I just want to put that out there. Like the work that you're doing, especially internationally, is amazing, and it's like definitely making a difference in those countries and in their societies. But when you're looking at the competition state with like oil, gas, and their energy solutions, I feel like there's a way that we can just get this more neutralized and them on board by adopting this type of technology and these solutions into their systems all across the board.
Absolutely. And it
Hmm.
does need to be an all of the above approach. And
Right.
what we need in terms of the private sector sometimes is to lead the charge, because
Hmm.
we aren't always going to have consistency when it comes to in terms of government preference for
Hmm.
energy solutions. So the private sector really does need to step up and provide those solutions, even in the absence of government funding,
Hmm.
when it makes sense. And one of the great things about our technology is that whether we're going to be subsidized or not, we do have the ability to make profit. And that's one of the great things about the technology, one of the great things about doing this as a business, and one of the great things that I like to sell to our potential customers.
Nice.
There is a big
That'll
return on
work.
your investment that's for you as well as for the planet, and that's called a
Hmm.
win-win, folks. That's what you want.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask, is
We're all kinds of
Hmm.
all kinds of winning. I'm all for that. So the other
all
thing that
kinds of
I'm
green.
kind of thinking about, like when Alicia's talking about, international versus domestic, here in the US, I'm kind of thinking a little bit of different terrain, different climates. Again, where I'm from, we have harsh winters, right? So an energy system that can keep on kicking, even though it's below 20 degrees outside and nasty wind chill, right? And keep you powered is a big deal, especially when if your power goes out and you lose heat, you're in a bad spot when it's that cold, right? And there are a lot of infrastructure things for all of us in cities and towns, but particularly in rural areas that sort of you get cut off from or can break down easily if you don't have that reliable energy source. So when you're looking at things like considerations for constructing your energy system, and like you said, only zero point 0.5 acres, not a lot of space. When you're looking at other considerations that people might have, like climate or like terrain, are you close to water? Can you maybe talk a little bit about the diversity that your system has in different geographical locations for different reasons? Just a little bit.
Sure. So the the advantage of having a technology that you could put anywhere and it works is that you can put it anywhere and it works. The the customer base then is essentially exploded, because you can market your technology to someone who just needs electricity, or maybe they need electricity and potable water, and maybe they need all four things all at the same time. And you can market your technology to whatever the use case of the customer really is. So if somebody desperately needs the electricity for their agricultural facility, then we can provide that very small footprint, very small cost, and now their agricultural facility is fully electrified 24/7, 365. And now they have their own microgrid in which to power maybe not just their own facility, but now they can actually sell some of that electricity to the grid, and that's another revenue source for them. So it's again all types of green in that fashion.
I love all types of green. I think that's just so great.
Yeah.
The number of uses and the ways that you can integrate this is really amazing. One
Mhm.
of the things that I'm thinking about, because again, Alicia and I have a lot of folks that we network with and work with in like the cannabis industry, for example. So I'm kind of thinking of things like, a lot of new facilities going up around the world, a lot of places that are looking to that are shifting their regulations around cannabis and around medical cannabis use. So again, you're looking at being able to support medical facilities and like a new, I don't want to say a new medicine. Cannabis has been used for thousands of years, so it's not,
Mhm.
but becoming more or less regulated. So when you're looking at things like that, and that's one of the things I thought of, like this would be perfect for like a cannabis growing facility because you can power what you need and you can create water that can go back into watering all the things that you're growing, like in
Mhm.
any kind of agriculture. So are there any particular industries? That's just one that came to my mind because again, it's some folks that we work with. Are there
Mhm.
any other industries that you're maybe really excited about getting into because of the benefit that it would have? Like you focused on transportation, for example, but are there other industries where you see this being something that could be, again, a benefit that can feed back into their own system?
Two of the industries that are growing in terms of fastest electricity demand on our current grid are obviously for electric battery vehicles, but also for data centers. So those two industries in particular are increasing the demand of electricity, and we will most likely have to increase the amount of our electricity generation or increase the efficiency of the grid. Most likely have to do both. And the fact that we as a technology can provide our own source of electricity generation capacity while also providing the capability to make the potable water, make hydrogen, makes us have an advantage over other different technologies, which are maybe only just one of those things. So those would be certain industries that we are also targeting in the future because the demand for the electricity is going to increase. And you don't want to get into a situation where you have, let's say, a blackout or a brownout because the demand for electricity in a given area has now exceeded what your current supply is. So
Mhm.
we want to have a technology like ourselves, which makes the grid more dynamic to the needs of the customer base.
That is, again, it's so impressive to me how well this just is like poised to be the pillar that new energy sits on. I really do love this. This is so exciting. So I'm also thinking in my mind about, again, because you can put it anywhere, the use you can have if you are sort of trying to support or build a new community, right? So, for example,
Mhm.
in places, and this is again something Alicia and I talked about, and I think you mentioned just a little bit, but maybe places like Africa that don't have infrastructure yet, or countries around the world that don't have the same kind of power grid or internet, for example, different infrastructures like that we're very used to in westernized society. When you're looking out into the future, what sort of, I guess if you were to kind of be pitching this to say like, governments or places that were like, charitable organizations that are helping set up infrastructure in these places, why is your energy source something that is, I don't want to say better, but like what makes yours sort of the best option
Mhm.
for a space where you're trying to build a new community that doesn't already have infrastructure?
So in terms of the footprint, the if you're going to a large country in Africa, they have the space, right? So
Mhm.
that's not really the issue. But the fact that you could have electricity generation, you could provide them with water treatment chemicals, and you can provide them with clean drinking water, you see it from across the table. Their eyes just light up, right?
Right.
That's exactly, a trifecta of what they're looking for in terms of a solution, because
Mhm.
something that you can purchase and it has overarching value beyond just an electricity generation capability that has ripple effects for the entire community that you're going to bring this technology to. So we do have some projects that we're exploring in Africa, and we have some great partnerships that we are looking forward to, building out that the technology in those areas, because we absolutely know that infrastructure is a critical part about transforming those societies from where they are now to where they absolutely could go in the next century.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It really is. So the other thing that I was kind of wanting to think of then, again, just I like to do the both sides thing, like Alicia, international versus domestic. Now let's go new infrastructure versus existing infrastructure. So
Mhm.
obviously, I love the idea that you go to places where people's eyes light up that like we can have clean water and electricity, and it's not going to take a massive amount of work and space. And oh my God, that's great. But when you're looking at places like where we're all kind of used to living, I guess, the bigger city spaces, the places that already have very established infrastructure, can you maybe talk about what are some of maybe the challenges that you might look at or that you might have in terms of kind of getting your technology into something that's already got an established infrastructure or established energy solution? And what are maybe some of the things that you might say are the benefits or the, hey, this isn't quite so scary as you think it is kind of elements that you might explain to folks who are looking to upgrade their energy systems to something that's greener?
Yeah, I was going to add to like for an example, right? Look at a place like Dubai or Saudi Arabia where they have the infrastructure and they're building it in the middle of the desert. And then you have a place like Bali, Indonesia, where you're building off of like a forest or a type of rainforest type of environment. But those places are equally very popular where people go to Bali for vacation or they're living there, but they don't necessarily have like pure, clean drinking water, but they're trying to
Mhm.
figure out a way to attract a certain target audience or people to come stay in that country. But take Dubai and Saudi Arabia, for example, you can go there, get the clean drinking water, but it's in the middle of the desert, but they already have an infrastructure in place to I would say pursue their type of target audience or their expats into those different countries. I just wanted to like give a like an example to bounce off what Haley said.
Sure. Thank you very
Mhm,
much. So
mhm,
normally what we will gravitate towards in terms of the selling process for an established infrastructure system is
mhm,
you most likely have an electricity generation source already for either some type of carbon that you're burning, whether that's coal or natural gas, or maybe it's nuclear, but you already have the transmission lines that's already established. So
mhm,
why not, instead of building all new, why don't we retrofit your existing system and run it off of an Ally Power reactor? And now
mhm,
suddenly you can translate all the sunk costs that you've already have in terms of your infrastructure, and now you're just erasing the greenhouse gas effect. But it's a relatively small investment to just swap out boilers, but now you have a huge impact in terms of your greenhouse gases that you're actually producing from that site. So that's how we really market our technology towards more established systems.
mhm,
One of the intriguing markets that we're also looking at, in addition to the examples that Alicia was mentioning, is also small islands. So
mhm,
small islands have some serious electricity needs, but they also are obviously separated from main power grids. So how do you create essentially their own grid and power source that's going to power all the operations of the island? And
mhm,
this gets into kind of our larger strategy as well, in that people like to vacation on those islands, right? So how do you set up a system that is going to power those islands? How are you going to set it up to market to the people who are then going to go to those islands? You want to
mhm.
make an interconnected ecosystem of people as well as technology that will feed on each other so that they can all benefit from the green technology.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I said Bali, for example, it's like, they want to build the infrastructure and they're working on it and it's becoming very popular, but how do you still preserve like their land and like their climate without uprooting or creating a chemical imbalance with like the transportation and like the emissions and the gases that are in the city itself, right? So it's like they're trying to build an infrastructure basically and like a jungle. I like to look at it that way.
Yes.
But it's like with like places like that, an energy solution like yours would be perfect to implement into their infrastructure where they can still have that balance between having their natural resources, their water, doing their I would say doing their what's it called? Like their sewer processing and things like that,
Mhm.
where it's not really affecting their natural environment by implementing these types of solutions, and keeping like their main base still really healthy instead of like cutting down the trees and building buildings, right? So it's like with those places, we just have to be very careful and keeping their natural agriculture in place because it's beautiful. Of course, really excited to visit, but I just want people to keep in mind like that's the vision, right? It's like if you're going to build an infrastructure in the middle of a rainforest or a jungle, you got to take in mind that like you're still building on that type of land or that type of soil and want to keep that type of keep that type of agriculture still in place.
Absolutely. Our standard is to
Mhm.
have no impact on
Yeah,
any of the sites that we
right.
are going to be operating on because we feel
Mhm.
that it would be a waste to have that type of impact, and then secondly, we want to make it the surrounding land better than where we found it, and that's a
Right.
guiding principle for the company.
Mhm.
Well, there's such beautiful places, and that's why people go there. And I think that's something that can sometimes happen to a place like what Alicia's talking about. You have a beautiful island spot, you have a beautiful, jungle spot. You have, even if it is, in the middle of a desert, you have these places that people like, oh, discover is really gorgeous. Everybody loves going there. And then suddenly there's an influx of people, there's an influx of infrastructure. And what drew people there in the first place gets, I mean, like the song says, pave paradise and put up a parking lot, right?
Yes,
But we're trying not to do that, guys. We're doing it differently this time. And Walt,
we
we
are.
Mhm.
so appreciate you that you're doing things differently. And really, it is so amazing the number of benefits that this the energy system has and how not harmful the process is. I mean, it's hard to say enough about it, how incredible it really is, this technology that you have developed. I'm just so impressed that you can create something that would provide so much for whomever is using it and for the greater community around them in the kind of resources that are things that are such a big part of our, I don't want to say civilized culture necessarily, but the kind of technologies and amenities that we've become accustomed to as humans, right?
Mhm.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about, again, just where do you see Allied Power in, say, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? This kind of an energy solution and the things that you're building. If you're going really far out from where you are here, what's the big dream for what Allied Power can do for the globe on the small scale and the bigger scale?
Well, I think that it's very intriguing the fact that we've built such a modern civilization based off of burning fossil fuels, and we've gotten to this height of civilization that we would not have been able to attain without them. And now there's this line of thinking that says that if we want to maintain this level of civilization, then we have to keep on burning what we have been burning for the last 100 years. And
Mhm.
that to me is a false premise because we can have this mighty civilization that we've built and not burn the fossil fuels. And this is how. So the fact that I get to show on a daily basis to people that we can actually have both at the same time and we don't have to sacrifice one for the other is something that, gives me a lot of joy in my heart, because then I get to give a lot of people a lot of great news that we don't have to sacrifice one for the other. In
Mhm.
terms of where we want to be 5 years from now, we certainly want to expand exponentially in terms of the amount of projects that we are going to be building out, number of partnerships that we're going to have. But we also have some exciting technology in the pipeline as well that I'm also in the process of getting, the invention through the final processes for the next patent, right? So
I
there's a
love a
lot of
good cliffhanger. That means you have to come back once we're allowed to talk about it. I'm so excited.
indeed. Indeed.
Yeah, I
So
was Oh, sorry, go ahead, Walt.
Yes. So some of the next technology is literally out of this world. So when we're talking about going to the multi-dimensions,
Mhm.
we're certainly steering
Yeah.
our way in there.
Oh,
Walt,
definitely
you're gonna
looking
get me
forward to
all
that.
excited.
Yeah, I was going to say this conversation is so refreshing because there's so much fear mongering on the news channels, especially in the Western world,
Mhm.
stating that like by 2030 we're not going to have clean drinking water. But it's like, look, Walt and other companies have come up with a solution where we can prevent that problem from happening as long as we're adopting this type of technology into our water solutions and into our eco structure, right? So definitely really appreciate you coming on here and giving us hope and giving us the truth about Allied Power and where we can go in the future. And we can all have clean drinking water, everybody.
That's
So I
right.
just
And we
wanted
can
to
all
put
have
that out. It's so super refreshing to hear that because there's a lot of people out there that actually believe what they're seeing on the news and like getting that misinformation. So it's really great to have you on this platform and look at the work that you're doing with Allied Power to give hope to the people out there. Like we can still have normal food to eat with all these hormones and carcinogens in there if we just changed the way that we are, growing our food or, processing our clean water all across the board, right? So very refreshing.
Thank you,
I
Alicia.
agree.
It's great to be on
Yeah,
this podcast. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
of course.
We do. We so appreciate the energy, again, the energy that you come from, not just the energy solution you have, but that you do
Mhm,
come from a place of wanting to do good. It's not
mhm,
the kind of bottom line paradigm that I think a lot of folks are fatigued of, shall we say, right?
mhm.
So if you do have any sort of maybe just message that you would want to give out for like ally power who you are, just as a hey guys, this is why. What are the parting words that you'd like to leave the audience with?
So I think that Ally Power is for clean energy everywhere, for everyone. We see the opportunities as boundless. We think that the technology is going to be available and it's applicable for almost every use case that you can think of. So if you have a project that you're looking to power, Ally Power will provide you with that power.
And some clean
Uh,
water to go along with it, which ain't half bad, y'all.
There you
yeah.
go.
I love it. Walt Alfred of Allied Power, thank you so much for being here with us today. It has
Yes.
been so much fun to learn more about your solution. We have to have you back again because my excited, curious brain has more questions, and I just love this. But
Mhm.
thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Alicia, for
Of
co-hosting. Thanks,
course. Yeah.
everybody who joined in the comments. And everyone, please do check out Allied Power. We've got links in the description below. Go click on them. Go educate yourself. Go get to know Walt. Hook up with him on LinkedIn because he's an awesome, fun person. I mean, look at how splendidly you are dressed. I thank you so much for bringing all your awesome energy.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you
very much,
all. Thank
Haley.
you. Yes, thank you
Thank you,
for your
Alicia.
work. And of course, definitely talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.